Super happy to be with everybody. Good morning, good morning. Just going to make sure everything's working and then we'll get into it. 1 second, talk amongst yourselves. Hi, everybody. Good morning, good morning. Really good, really good. Really good. Okay, we are all set. That makes my heart happy. Yay. You have to love it when everything works. So, I have a lot to share with you. First of all, good morning. Welcome to Call to Calm. Super happy to be with you all. Hope you're all doing well. I've got a lot of ground to cover this morning, so I want to get started. What keeps you trapped in a life that doesn't reflect your potential or that reflects diminished potential? Is this underlying feeling that you have that you did something wrong, that you in some way are wrong? So just imagine for a moment that when you come into this world, as this perfection, this beauty, this possibility. And then over time, because that potential and that possibility is not received, through no fault of your own, you then begin to invalidate who you are, begins to create some insecurity, some self-doubt. And it leads to life becoming more challenging than it actually needs to be. Who can relate? Leave me a 1 or a yes in the chat on Zoom if you can relate. After a while, you realize that, and this takes a while, right? For some of you, this is a 30 or 40 or 50-year discovery. For some of you, it happens sooner, but sometimes it takes a lifetime. After a while, you realize that actually you're not wrong. You're not wrong. So, for example, let's just say that I'm an inventor. And I invent something, I create something, but it's so far beyond the scope of technology today, or what people even perceive to be usable or viable, that they discount it, right? They discredit it because, of course, there's no context for it in the modern world. But just because people can't make the most of it now, does that mean that what I've invented is invalid? No, it does not. Eventually, infrastructure, technology, all of the adjacent parts that are required to make this invention work will come into existence, and then they'll realize what I realized at the point of at the point of creating it, that it has the capacity to change an industry, quality of life, the way we see ourselves. And in that same way, you are that invention. And you've been catapulted into the world. And instead of being met with a sense of acceptance or excitement, you've been met with scrutiny, criticism, judgment. You've been rendered useless. What am I supposed to do with this? And as a result of that, then you're trying to make this beautiful creation that you are make sense in the context of all of the external feedback that you've been receiving, most of which is quite honestly based in the lack of self-acceptance and self-love of others. And so after about 30, 40 or 50 years of following this fundamentally flawed thesis that you're broken, you're the problem, you're the issue, that there's something wrong with you, that you're useless, something begins to wake up in you. And you begin to realize, if you're awake and aware enough, that, well, you've pretty much consistently been yourself throughout your whole life. And that in consistently being yourself your whole life, you actually haven't changed. You also begin to realize that the more you've tried to change, the more you've tried to be different, the more you've just further invalidated yourself. And so one day you wake up to something else, and what is that? Well, that's, all right, well, I've tried to change, I've tried to be different, and this innovation that's come into existence that's been refuted and denied and invalidated by everybody. So maybe the issue here is not in the fact that I am who I am, or that this innovation, this groundbreaking technology came into being. It's in the user error. And user error basically translates in human dynamics as the distortions of others, the pain-based distortions of others. See, because how they see themselves is how they see you. And the majority of human beings on this planet don't see themselves clearly. They don't see themselves through the eyes of love. They see themselves through a lens of imperfection, which is the same lens of imperfection that their family members, their parents saw themselves through. Society sees it through. Friend groups, peer groups, co-workers, colleagues see themselves through. So if all of this is indeed just a mental construct that everyone's agreed to, and light, energy and vibration is really just taking the form of whatever this mental construct is because we've all agreed upon it, I'd like to give you another vision, maybe, another potential, another possibility. Let's try it, shall we? Let's see how we feel. If all else fails, we can always go back to suffering again. Spending countless hours workshopping ourselves trying to figure out why people don't accept and love us. That's always fun. The good old days. All right, close your eyes and breathe and relax. Let's try something. So let's imagine for a second that it only takes two people to recognize a new agreement. Just like if you were an inventor and you invent something and, the majority of the world rejects it, but one person embraces it and they get the value of it. It's almost like you feel validated. So how about we just agree to a new construct, a new way of being human, one that isn't limited. And we're just going to keep it simple. In this version of being human, everybody loves you. Everybody helps you. Everybody wants you to win. Just take a deep breath. Everybody loves you. Everyone helps you. Everybody wants you to win. And just paying particular attention to how you feel. Okay. If all of this is indeed just a mental construct, just an agreement that we've all agreed to unconsciously, that we perpetuate generation after generation because we're just not awake or aware enough to see it for what it is. Well, then if there are two of us here and we come up with a new agreement, and that new agreement is that, well, everybody loves us, everybody helps us, everybody wants us to win, and then we multiply that by everyone who's here listening to this live and everyone who's going to listen in the replay, just begin to feel into what that's like for you, and especially those of you that are live on Zoom that can chat. Just let me know in the chat on Zoom, what does that feel like? What does that version of being a human being feel like? What does that version of life and living feel like? What's it like? Well, and let's let's up the ante, shall we? So, all right. So if this is all just a mental agreement, if it's all just something that we've all agreed to unconsciously and we're all participating in, and we come up with a new one. Everybody loves us, everybody helps us, everybody wants us to win. Well, then the icing on the cake, and this is the thing that sets you free from suffering, is that you don't have to be any other way than you are in order to be loved. That if in fact that is the new ripple that we're putting out into creation, into reality, well then we don't actually have to be any other way than we are in order to receive it. Just take a deep breath. So there's nothing wrong with you. There's never been anything wrong with you. You've succumbed to user error in the way that great innovation does. Your fellow human beings have interpreted you in the same way that they interpret everything else, in a very limited fashion. And they relate to you in the same way that they relate to themselves, typically with some degree of self-hatred, self-loathing, and invalidation. So can you see that here you are, this beautiful potential and possibility, and you literally represent what it takes for us all to come together and love each other and collaborate and inspire a greater future for us all as a species. So how about we set ourselves free by recognizing, okay, well, fine, we're going to live in a different version of being human. And you'll notice that people are living in different manifestations of being human. For example, there's a religious manifestation of being human. Well, that's just an agreement. There's a spiritual manifestation of being human. Well, that's just an agreement too. That actually, everywhere where you identify with any ideology or belief system, that's just another perception, just another perspective on reality. It doesn't mean that it's true. But let's get back to the main point here, and I want you to notice how you feel. Beloved, there is nothing wrong with you. It's not you. You're not alone. You can stop trying so hard. It's not you. You are not alone. And you can stop trying so hard. And here's what allows me to say with absolute certainty that it's not you. You've always consistently been yourself, and no matter how hard you've tried to change, to appease other people, it's never worked. Which means that there is a fundamental reason why you are the way you are. And given the fact that you've been that way now for, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years, I wouldn't expect that trend to change anytime soon. You're still youing. Okay. So now what's different? Well, what's different is now I've given you a collective framework that allows you to be you. See? And what is that collective framework? Well, let's see it. The collective framework is everybody loves you, everybody helps you, everybody wants you to win. Is that a world? Is that a collective agreement? Let's come up with a word. Just like religion has a framework, spirituality has a framework. Let's call this, I don't know, the self-love setting, love mode. Right? Let's call it that. Okay, let's come up with a loving agreement. Not to say that any other agreement isn't loving, but let's just agree that everybody loves us, everybody helps us, everybody wants us to win. And that we don't have to be any other way than we are in order to be loved, in order to be supported, in order to be validated. Do you understand? Do you see what I'm saying to you? So at some point, rather than perpetuating unconscious agreements where human beings have to constantly strive, attain, achieve, prove, justify the air that they breathe, for no reason other than the fact that their fellow human beings have been incapable of embracing them the way they are, because they can't embrace themselves, let's try a little experiment. And I just want to make sure that you're all getting this in your own way. And never believe me, always try this out for yourselves. Okay, everything's just an agreement. Everything's just a mental model. Everything is just a framework that a collective group of people have agreed upon. That's all it is. And then that is something that constitutes reality then. Why? Because enough people have agreed upon it. Alright, fine. The only problem is that you don't fit into every existing model of being human. Have you noticed that? You don't fit. You don't necessarily fit into a religious framework. You don't even fit into a spiritual framework. You don't fit into a societal framework. You don't fit into a familial framework. You actually kind of don't fit into any of those things. But the great thing about being a human being is, after a while we figure it out and we innovate. There's an evolutionary iteration that we go through. And I feel like we're living in that time now, the evolution of everything, where we're going through this redefinition. And what is that redefinition? Well, the redefinition is, I am who I am. And the fact that who I am has not been embraced or accepted by others is no longer my concern. I am who I am, and the fact that I haven't been embraced by others or loved by others is not my problem. So I'm just going to disengage from all of the ways that I've been putting out energy and trying to bring that reality into being that's never going to happen. And I'm just going to realize that actually, well, there's no flaw on the part of the creator. There's nothing wrong with what's been innovated. That there's just user error, and user error being that love has been presented to people who don't love themselves. User error. Or that at least they don't know that they can love themselves. They don't know that they can be peaceful and live a great life and have all the things that they're supposed to have without bursting a blood vessel. So, when your reality doesn't allow you to fully express all that you are, it's okay to innovate a whole new one. For 1,278 days, every single day, and every single day of my life prior to Call to Calm, I've told you that there's nothing wrong with you, that you're not broken, that you don't have to be healed, fixed, changed, or improved. And here's why. Because somebody else's lack of self-love has to stop being your problem. Somebody else's lack of acceptance has to stop being your issue. As we've discovered this week, you actually don't have a problem being you. There's no issue when it's just you and yourself. What you've been diligently trying to uncover or unravel is why you are not received by others. So then they reject you. You make their rejection your own rejection of yourself. And then you try and fix, heal, change and improve something that isn't yours in the first place. So let's go back to the second salient point of today's monologue. It's not you. Take a deep breath. You don't have a problem being you. You've never had a problem being yourself. The only reason why any of this has been hard is because you've been trying to make sense of what it means to be you in relationship to others. So you've been having a fundamentally codependent relationship with your own experience of yourself. And this is why other people's perceptions of you have become your perceptions of yourself. So when people ask you, who are you? You don't even know. Because your answer will be based in how other people have perceived you. So how do we step out of the drama, nonsense? Okay, it's not me. Just take a deep breath. It's not me. Somebody else's inability to accept me is not my problem anymore. Somebody else's inability to love me is not my problem anymore. In fact, I'm just going to be myself. I'm going to stop diminishing who and what I am because other people have been incapable of embracing me. And I'm actually going to be the totality of all that I am, regardless. Because if all of this is indeed just a mental model or a mental construct or agreement, and every point of identification is just a subset of agreement within a larger agreement, well then I'm just going to innovate a new one. And the new one is as follows. From now on, I embrace my wholeness and completion. And I do that through my acknowledgement that I have never ever in my life had a problem being me. Actually. And I'm done turning other people's problems with me into my own. Take a deep breath. And instead of trying to fit into a mental agreement or a model or a world that's stifling, like a velour pair of pants, stifling, leather pants on a humid day, stifling. I'm going to come up with my own framework. And my own framework is as follows. As of today, I am no longer the problem. There isn't one. I'm done spending countless hours trying to become spiritual enough. I'm done attending seminars and working on myself trying to become successful enough. The truth is, I will never be enough for people who aren't enough for themselves. I will never be enough for those who aren't enough for themselves. So I'm going to set myself free from the illusion, the simulation, the Maya, the Matrix, whatever you want to call it, by finally just being good enough for myself and no longer having a problem with being a human being. And I'll prove it to you. You actually don't have a problem with your anger. The only reason why you have a problem with your anger is because people judged you for being angry. So as of today, can we please just stop having a problem being angry? Because you actually don't have a problem with it. You also don't have a problem with being sad. You also don't have a problem with being afraid. Actually, you don't have a problem with anything that's going on inside of you because you never have. The only reason why these things have become limitations is because other people were incapable of being with these things within themselves. As of today, you don't have a problem. You are just, sadly, a byproduct of user error. A breakthrough technology and innovation. Slightly ahead of its time. Eccentric, quirky, adorable. That people just don't know what to do with. Because they haven't evolved enough yet to figure out that they don't have to do anything with it. So from now on, let's please not care about anyone who wears Let's please not care about the opinion of anyone who decides that wearing parachute pants is a good idea. Or any other configuration thereof of really interesting fashion choices. Because if people are going to arbitrarily just not love and accept us, well then we can just have arbitrary reasons for not loving and accepting other people too. See, but here's where it gets hard. I've discovered that once you stop having a problem being you, you stop having a problem with everyone else being themselves too. I know. Wild, right? When you actually stop having a problem being you, somehow, miraculously, stop having a problem with everyone else being themselves too. So then at that point, somebody else's lack of self-love is no longer an issue. You can just love them in their lack of self-love. You can just love them in their lack of self-acceptance. But when they can't love you back, you don't sit there going, well, what's wrong with me? My chakras aren't spinning properly. Mercury must be in retrograde. Where are my crystals? When they don't love you back, you realize that, well, they're just demonstrating their capacity for their own self-love. That it has nothing to do with you. Got it? So today, let's just agree to a new mental model. Today's mental model is, everybody loves me, everybody helps me, everybody wants me to win. Why not? And from now on, I don't have a problem being myself. I don't have an issue being myself. I actually am 100% perfectly qualified to be myself, and I've been myself for every day of my life for years now. It's actually the only thing that I'm capable of being. So remember today, you may never be good enough for anyone else because the people that you're trying to be good enough for are not good enough for themselves. But as of today, you can absolutely be good enough for you. Laurel, or anyone. Oh, stop typing Om Shanti, shorts or pants. Day 1278. I can't believe it. Cargo pants, thank you, Laurel. Thanks for that appropriate categorization of fashion items. Love you, Al. Let's do it. Close your eyes and breathe and relax. Good morning, sweet friends, and welcome to another Call to Calm meditation. I've realized something about you. You're adorable and 100% lovable. I know, shocking, but true, you are, every single one of you. And the reason why I've discovered this about you, well, coincidentally, is because I discovered it about myself. You see, we have been relying on the acceptance and the approval of others for far too long. That's like, in ancient times, relying that the weights that the merchant is using to exchange your gold coin for grain is actually accurate and not tilted in favor of the merchant. Reality has been fundamentally skewed, riddled with distortion. And what I've discovered actually is that there is no external metric that is reliable to determine, define, or even form any kind of conclusion that's meaningful about yourself. And here's why. This week I've been talking about life being akin to a hall of mirrors. Well, if you've ever been to one of those, based on how warped the mirror is, when you look in one mirror, your head's shrunken, like you've been a part of some ritual that you didn't even know about, and your body's huge. Go and stand in front of another mirror, then all of a sudden your torso's huge, your legs are teeny weeny, and so on and so forth. So every time you look in the mirror, you're actually getting the reflection of the distortion of the other person. And what is the distortion of the other person? The distortion of the other person is just primarily their own lack of self-love and acceptance. So what you've been trying to do is you've been trying to see yourself clearly through the eyes of others. The only problem is that the mirror that you're using is warped. Close your eyes and open your palms and breathe and relax. Just becoming aware of every inhalation and exhalation. Resting in the awareness of your breath transforms your life into a living meditation. This morning, we're just going to imagine that everyone in our lives is one of those portable mirrors on wheels. It's typically a full body length mirror on wheels. It's the kind of thing that you can acquire pretty reasonably at most furniture stores. And we're just going to realize that we actually fundamentally don't have a distorted image of ourselves. We've just been using mirrors that are distorted. So this morning, standing in front of the mirror that represents your mother, and just recognizing that it's not her fault, that she sees you the way that she does. She sees you to the degree to which she's been allowed through the course of her life to see herself, which may not be very much at all. And she loves you to the degree to which, throughout the course of her life, she's had the courage to cultivate some autonomy and self-sovereignty and love herself. Which may not be very much at all. Acknowledging today that you will never be good enough for her, and that no matter how hard you try, you're not going to say it right or do it right ever, because it was never about you. You cannot fix, heal, or change, or improve your mother's self-love and acceptance. Take a deep breath. And you no longer have to limit your own acceptance and love because of her lack of acceptance and love. She did the best that she could. She's doing the best that she can. She's not you. Continuing to rest in the awareness of your breath, standing in front of the mirror that is Dad. Same thing. If you continue to use the mirror of Dad to know yourself, then you're going to know yourself through your father's distortions. Lack of acceptance, lack of self-love. And just getting it clearly, clearer than you ever have before. You also begin to recognize that you're never going to be able to say it right, do it right, or attain enough or accomplish enough to appease him. Because he doesn't love himself. He's not enough in who he is. Never has been. Because he's the product of a mirror that didn't fully love and accept him. And so actually, you begin to notice behind the mirror that represents Mum, that there's a series of mirrors. It's like dominoes. They just span throughout time. These are just generation after generation after generation of family members on the maternal side that loved and accepted themselves to whatever degree they could. But you see, these mirrors, this relationship that you're having with you, is a direct product of a generational lack of acceptance and love. And in that same way, you begin to notice behind Dad's mirror that there's a long line of mirrors behind Dad's mirror, and that actually every one of those mirrors is only a reflection of bygone generations that were incapable of accepting them, loving themselves too. You begin to realize that your parents' inability to accept you and love you completely is actually not personal at all. Just taking a deep breath. You realize that they're a product of a whole lineage of human beings that have not, for whatever reason, fully loved and accepted themselves. Unplugging yourself, freeing yourself, and for the first time being enough for you. What we're going to do is arrange these mirrors like one of those wonderful epic extreme domino sets into the shape of a giant heart. And we're going to place a new mirror in front of the mirror of Dad and in front of the mirror of Mum, and this mirror is pure love. Except instead of that mirror turning and facing you, the mirror that represents self-love is turning and facing Mum and Dad, and then every subsequent generation of your family and your lineage beyond them. And in good old fashion, the most fulfilling and gratifying moment of any epic extreme domino set is when you push the first domino down. As soon as you do, every other mirror that represents every other member of your family and lineage begins to fall, until eventually they have all fallen to the ground and formed a giant heart shape, leaving you amused, entertained, and standing in the middle. All of a sudden you begin to feel the energy that was trapped in all of these mirrors lifting up and out of them. Self-doubt, insecurity, self-hatred, self-loathing, trauma, abuse. Everything that they couldn't love about themselves or accept about being a human being. All of that begins effortlessly lifting up and out of all of these mirrors in the form of grey ash or smoke. Until eventually, every mirror that represents every person in your lineage, maternal and paternal, is free of its distortions, it's free of its fear, it's free of its survival, it's free of its lack of acceptance and self-love. As if by magic, every mirror resets itself. But this time, all of the mirrors turn and face inward so that you can see yourself in them. What's different is that now they accurately reflect you back to you. Standing in front of the mirror of Mum, you can feel how enormous her love for you was. Her love for you is. Now that she's free of her own distortions, she can love you wholeheartedly with the totality of her being in the way that she always wanted to, but never knew she could. Same thing when you stand in front of the mirror of Dad. And as you walk around this beautiful heart-shaped hall of mirrors, instead of seeing and experiencing one distortion after another, you see, feel, and experience the clarity of their love for you. Deeply touches your heart. It deeply touches your heart because for the first time you're recognizing how enormous everyone's love for you actually is. You also recognize that it was not your fault, that they couldn't see themselves clearly, therefore they could not see you, therefore they could not love you fully. Now they all can. Walking in front of mirror after mirror after mirror, you begin to recognize that actually everyone loves you, that everyone wants to help you, that everybody wants you to win. You feel unburdened, relieved, no longer consumed with trying to solve a problem or an issue that was never yours in the first place. You thank all of these beautiful mirrors, thanking your lineage, thanking everyone in your family 7 generations ahead and 7 generations behind. And they all thank you for being the person, being the family member who finally broke the cycle. The individual in the family who uncovered the love that they are within themselves and changed the course of the future. For everyone that's connected to you. Just take some deep breaths. And just notice how you feel. If you're on Zoom, let me know in the chat how you're doing. Wonderful. Wonderful. Good. Well, today's Thursday. I won't be here tomorrow. There will be no call to calm and no group alignment session, because I'm traveling tomorrow. I'm going to a wonderful place called the Omega Institute to facilitate a retreat this weekend. So just know that I won't be here tomorrow morning. Which leaves us with today. Funnily enough, what's happening today? Well, not much of anything outside of the group alignment session. And what are we going to do in the group alignment session? Well, in the group alignment session, I'm going to support you personally in a group setting, in fully coming into this love of yourself and being enough in who you are, so that you can be freed of whatever's left as it relates to distortions, interpretations of others. If that sounds great, might want to rearrange your morning to be there. Also, just a reminder to those of you that will miss me tomorrow, all access replays. Also, you won't have to miss me too much, because Omega has graciously agreed to live stream the event for those of you that can't get on a plane and travel. So there's that. You know, for as long as I'm alive, I'm going to keep showing up here and finding new and innovative ways to let you know that you're totally loved, that there's nothing wrong with you, and that you deserve to live a great life. One day, and that's a day that I very much look forward to, you're going to believe me. And on that day, everything that I've said is going to make perfect sense. Until then, I'm going to increasingly go from being somebody who just sounds crazy. What do you mean I can love myself? What do you mean I'm good enough? To all of a sudden being the sanest person in your life. You know, he's actually got a point. I like this self-love thing. Feels good. It's effervescent. So, thanks for a great week. Thursday's the new Friday. Again, I won't be here tomorrow. So, don't log on. Or log on. No, just sit there, waiting. Either way. I'll see you for the group alignment session. And I'm going to start wrapping my head around the fact that I have to travel. Start getting things ready to travel. I can't remember the last time was that I actually had to travel anyway. So, this is going to be great. Take care, you beautiful beings. And thanks for being in my life. And I mean it. One day, I'm going to say it in the way that you're going to be able to hear it. And on that day, everything in your life will make sense to you. Be well, you beautiful beings. I'll see you on Monday.